Spectrum by, basically this was done in conjunction with the, let's see who did this. It was the Pride Education Network in conjunction with the BC Teachers Federation, and it was uploaded by Glenn Hansman himself, who is the president, so it's obviously a very important book. And I'll be citing some of the recommendations in that book, and you'll note that this book says what educators need to know, okay? And we'll see what they're saying educators need to know. So this is going on right now, okay? This is not something that's going to go on in the future. It's going on in schools right now. They have got kids sitting down, being exposed to this stuff. A lot of teachers, because of the way things work between the BC Teachers Federation and the teachers, a lot of teachers are sort of, I guess there's an old term from bullfighting called espontaneos. These people who leap into the rings to take on the bulls themselves. Teachers are taking this on themselves because the resources are there and they want to go get them, so they're actually using them. Here we see a BC classroom, a bunch of kids looking at a video that features somebody named True Wilson, who has become a bit of a celebrity locally. True Wilson, who actually forced Catholic schools to make accommodations for transgender identified kids, was named one of the, actually it was number 20, placed number 20 of the most powerful people in Vancouver. Okay, so SOGI. SOGI was designed largely in secret. One of the interesting things about SOGI is the history of, the official history of SOGI and how it sort of came into existence. It keeps changing. They keep changing who was involved as they move along. But if you look at the original description of where it came from, it's all written here. It basically says, BC SOGI Educator Network is led by the ARC Foundation, which is a private foundation. The ARC Foundation developed SOGI 123 in collaboration with the BC Ministry of Education, the BC Teachers Federation, the University of British Columbia faculty, out in schools in 9 school districts, as well as local, national, and international LGBTQ organizations. That's their official original history, but that has changed somewhat. But I'm going to go with the original history, because they want to try to say now that all kinds of parents were involved in the creation of SOGI. No. And they want to try to say now that, well, we consulted community leaders. No. Laura Lynn doesn't know any community leaders who were consulted about this. I don't know any community leader. Carrie Simpson, who's very connected to community, she doesn't know anybody who was consulted on this. But they want to keep changing the history, because when people like me point out that large segments of the community were totally ignored, they want to try to rewrite the history to say that that's not true. So the ARC Foundation was a key player in this, and they're actually sort of the driving force there. These SOGI leads that are in schools are the responsibility of the ARC Foundation, and they basically are liaisons between teachers and the SOGI program. Now, if you go to their website, they proudly announced that they fund various things. They fund a lot of sort of benign-looking things, the stuff at education, out in schools, the Dr. Peter AIDS Foundation, stuff like that. It's interesting, though, that what doesn't appear on this list, well, it's hinted at with out in schools down the bottom there, is that they also fund Out on Screen and the Queer Film Festival, which essentially produces what is gay pornography. Okay? These are the people that are the driving force behind SOGI. Okay, so I don't know if any of you know, but Laura Lynn and I basically led a protest in Victoria last month on April 23rd against SOGI. And we had a banner made for that. And I came up with this, what I thought was a catchy slogan, SOGI 123, Equal Child Brainwashing 101. Now, I was the official media spokesperson for that event, so I talked to a lot of reporters and TV people and stuff at the event, and that's interesting because almost all of them ignored me after the fact when I went to print and stuff, like I didn't exist. But they talked to me anyway at the time, and one of the reporters was looking at the sign. He was going, well, what are you talking about, like brainwashing? Brainwashing the kids? What do you mean they're brainwashing them? Well, I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so one of the resources recommended for kids, and this is for grades kindergarten through grade 4, is something Laura Lynn mentioned earlier, which is I Am Jazz, which is going to connect kids, if they connect to this book, to the TV show, and like a whole regular indoctrination of I Am Jazz. That's the TV show, I Am Jazz, very popular on TLC. So there's a lesson plan that they have for I Am Jazz that teachers are supposed to use as a guideline to sort of, reach some sort of, achieve some sort of goal or ends. And so they list things that the teachers should do. And in that lesson plan, it says the following. They're supposed to say this to the kids. It's all okay. It's important to do the things you like to do and wear the clothes you feel most comfortable in. What pronoun would you use for someone who is both a boy and a girl, or neither? Some babies are called a gender identity when they are born that isn't the right one. A baby is called a girl, and then she grows up to be a boy and a man. A baby is called a boy, and then grows up to be a girl and a woman. Or a baby called a boy can grow up to be both a boy and a girl. This is transgender. They are deliberately confusing these kids. Okay, that is an example of why I consider this brainwashing. Adults listen to this and they get confused, let alone young kids in kindergarten and grade 1 and grade 2. What are they doing?
Yep.
Okay, so another thing that they are recommending, and this is under a category called Questioning Gender Expectations, which recommends a film called Creating Gender Inclusive Schools. And in this film, they have various things that teachers can do to make their classrooms more gender inclusive. And one of the things in there that they recommend using is something called the gender line. Okay, so what they do with the gender line is they draw a line on the board, on the whiteboard at the front of the class. And on one side, on the far one side, it's male, and on the other side, it's female. And they get every kid to come up to the front of the class and identify where on that line they fit. Not male, not female. Very few ever go to those extremes. They always place somewhere in the middle. They are sort of forcing kids out of their normal, sort of biologically determined gender roles. They're forcing them to place somewhere in the middle. So they are conflating, that's another problem. Again, this is the language game that they're playing and why I'm such a stickler for language, is they are conflating sex and gender, okay? Male and female is not a gender, those aren't gender references, okay? Gender is a set of dress and expectations and roles typically associated with one sex or the other. Gender is not sex, but they are conflating the two at this time, and they're doing it with our kids. Okay, so now we're into some of these recommendations in the Gender Spectrum book. Okay, this is an interesting one. Actually, that's probably not the right one. Yeah, that's it right there. The thing that I found interesting here is it said, avoid making heterosexist statements. In the middle there, it says, don't say during sexual health education that it is normal to develop romantic feelings for the opposite sex. Don't say that it's normal to develop romantic feelings for the opposite sex. It is normal. All the statistics bear that out. Why are they doing this? Steve Mulligan, who's very involved in this SOGI project, has talked about things like this, and he has said on video that when you're teaching kids, what I would call brainwashing kids, it's almost more, in some cases, it's more important to focus on what you don't say. So you need to leave certain things out. That's part of the brainwashing process, right? So don't say that it's normal to develop romantic feelings for the opposite sex. We can't have that going on, right? so this is from one of the lesson plans in there. What I found interesting here is that it refers to like when teachers are drawing things on the chalkboard or the whiteboards or whatever, that they should avoid gendering stick figures, so don't put skirts on them and stuff like that. And when I saw that, I was wondering, well, I wonder if that's related to this. Don't put skirts on stick figures. Maybe the goal being this?
Yeah.
As it turns out, that is the goal. Okay? So the recommendations for teachers also recommend that boys, for instance, who identify as girls, should be granted access to whichever washroom they identify with. So, and all these boys will be intact. You can't get genital surgery until you're 18 in BC, I believe. So they're all going to be fully intact young males. But if they say that they're female, into the women's washroom they go. And it's not just the washroom. So that is one of the misnomers. So when you look across North America or really around the world, whenever they introduce these transgender bills and stuff for transgender rights, they're always called the bathroom bills. And they say it's always just about having a place to pee. Well, it's more than that. So it's about having access to locker rooms and change rooms. So at the swimming pool during PE class, when young girls are getting out of their wet bathing suits and stuff, if there's a boy who identifies as a girl, he gets to go in there with her. Now, I happen to know in Abbotsford, which is where I live, I happen to know a young transgender boy. He identifies as a girl. He's got the long hair and everything. He's also into this furry thing. I don't know if people know what these furries are. It's sort of like they dress up like animals, and it's got all kinds of twisted connotations. But he's into that too. But he identifies as a girl. Now this boy, I happen to know, is a foul-mouthed, oversexed, heterosexual boy. Into the girls' change room he goes. And this also affects sports. So any young boy who decides that he's a girl can now compete in sports that aligns with his gender identity, which too often is sex, and they're conflating these two. So this is becoming an emerging issue. So Andrea Yearwood says that he's a girl. So he has been competing in women's track events and stuff, and doing very well. You can see here, all the women are all way behind, right? Okay, but he's a girl, they say. If you want to look at sort of an actual comparison, we've got some good stats. Somebody named Terry Miller, in 2017, he identified as a boy and was taking part in boy sports. And in 2018, he changed and said, okay, now I'm a girl. So in the 100 meters, you can see here that Terry finished in the boys the year before in 13th position. The next year, in the women's, he's in first place and broke a record. 200 meters, boys, he was in 16th spot. Girls, first place, another broken record.
That's awesome.
400 meters, he didn't even place, but he finished in first place in 400 meters. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think this is fair to girls.
Yep. Wow.
Female athletes' rights.
That's part of it. That's part of why I'm here. So the curriculum. Okay, so SOGI is frequently misidentified as a curriculum. It's not a curriculum. It's a set of resources that are used with the curriculum to achieve certain goals. And in this case, the goal is to brainwash these kids and indoctrinate these kids into this gender ideology and some of the other sort of radical LGBTQ ideologies. On the SOGI website, they describe the SOGI as a thread, and that's because it sort of is threaded its way through all of the grades and all of the subjects in school. It is like it's like not just like all of the different classes and stuff, but like from kindergarten to grade 12, right, all the way through, right? And the goal of SOGI is to make sure that that stays on their minds.